Good morning. It is Friday. For those of you who were there last night, welcome back. Um, Hopefully, you all had a entertaining show last night. It was entertaining for us. Um, Very entertaining for us. And so today, Q&A day. Um, I only discovered one question in my inbox, so I took a look at it, and this was the question here. Then when I'm done with this one, I can open up the floor. So you know how when Jesus was on the cross and he said, "Why have you forsaken me?" Was he away from the presence of the Father because he had taken the sins of the world on his body? And I was just wondering where else in Scripture it might say that God cannot look upon sin. And if we sin, is God away from us because he can't look upon sin? Because we sin so often sometimes. I've just been curious if you have an answer for that. Um, there's debate about what he meant by the forsaken thing. There's references to him quoting a Psalm of David to fulfill that. Had people say that it was a leaving of um, the flesh on the cross by itself and the God nature leaving for that moment. There's all kinds of non-codified responses to that statement. My approach to that has always been something more simplistic than trying to evaluate what he meant, didn't mean, what was said. So this is my answer for people. Whether or not we want to think of the cross as a um, God dying situation. Of course, you can't kill the nature of God. We know that. But the sin that resides in flesh was not there for Christ. Um, he did not sin, but he was housed in fallen flesh. And the forsaking for me, from what I can see, is the leaving of that flesh to die. Instead of it being eternal, it had to die. The forsaking of the eternal life is gone, and so he died. Um, of course, that splendor returned on his resurrection. Again, this is just my interpretation because there's not any other real solidified reasons as to him saying, "Why have you forsaken me?" You can ask 4 different scholars and they'll tell you 4 different stories. As for us today and him not looking upon sin, um, there is a marked difference between living in sin and being saved from sin. And there is a massive difference between a Christian and a non Christian. While you may still be in the flesh, you are not bound to sin when you become a Christian. When you're not a Christian, you're bound to sin. You can't look upon that because that's not something that you can just, which is why a sinner just can't walk up to Christ and be done. You know what I'm saying? You can't just be like, "Oh, I don't believe in God," and expect to have the presence of God. It's not possible. So when you have a living in sin versus a former life of sin, they're two completely different things. You have the availability of the blood, you have the availability of grace, and when you're not a Christian, that's not the case. Um, I think we want to say we have some sort of good in us, but the admission of "I am no good" has to happen before you can even approach. And so when we want to tell people how you are is okay, okay, yeah, how you are is okay before coming to Christ. once you've come to Christ, you have to recognize that it's not okay, and you can't be there anymore. That's a recognition that you have to have. You can't just bring what you are and say that's how I'm staying. That's not how that works. So that's my answer to that. Of course, I'm probably going to get blowback from that, but that's okay. It's like I said, it's what I believe. I didn't say people had to believe it. Didn't say people had to take that answer as the answer. That's my answer. Um, so yeah. Any other questions in the chat? Any other questions? If not, it's an early day. Y'all get to go out free and hang out with your people. If there are no other questions, you're making it easy on me. I'm thankful for that. I can definitely use going back to bed. Not a problem for me. It's not a problem to go back to bed today. After last night, I could sleep for another 2 hours. Maybe y'all have questions about last night, and I have questions for you guys about last night. Was I rude? Because I've been told multiple times now that I was rude, and I cannot remember much about my interaction with Bryson to know if I was rude or not. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Yeah, it's like I said, it's mentioned in Psalms too, as well. So I tried not to be. I mean, I tried not to be rude last night, but he didn't leave me a whole lot of room to be nice, especially when you come at people's throat first off. Like that don't make no sense to me. Like, hey, no worries, so and so, no worries. You didn't miss anything. Trust me, you didn't miss anything. Uh, it was the most fruitless, pointless appearance of any human being I've ever seen. Like I have a suspicion that's exactly how a debate with Marcus Rogers would go too. Same way. Inability to answer just a straightforward question. Um, if you know something about somebody and you believe that that's wrong, then don't have any affiliation with them, right? Okay, good. And that goes for anybody that has the same issue with me. If you have a problem with me, don't have any affiliation. It's that easy. I'm not changing who I am for people, and I have not been asked to change for anybody. God hasn't said anything, so. Um, but I don't understand why you would want to be in collusion with someone like Kanye. I just don't get it. So I don't get it. I mean, even if you thought the man had changed, he has not left the location of where the devil plays. But you went to join him in his devil's playground on the pretense of God. I don't get how that makes any sense, but hey, to each his own. To each his own. That's what I thought too. But is okay. So when you don't brand somebody in your mind something, um, you can hang out with them. So you keep from branding them that, and you always give them a way out so that you can hang out with them, even though you know they're not good people. Since I am not a Catholic, and they may consider certain things unholy, or they consider marriage a distraction for whatever their reasons is, they have that. That's not a biblical thing at all. Um, they've decided that. I couldn't tell you why, but they also, you know, stem from a certain individual who had an affinity for younger boys, and so you see it kind of carried out in how they, quite a few of them, interact with altar boys and why they have altar boys. So I have a suspicion that the whole "don't get married" thing is in an effort to maintain that particular attraction. So people can disagree with that all they want, but it's very rampant there. So I thought I saw another question. Do you think the charismatic church is full of this? Full of what? It's full with a lot of things. I'll tell you that. Um, I'm not saying every charismatic is weird, but a lot of them depend on emotionality to call it spirituality. A lot of them do. A lot of them do. Oh yeah, oh yeah, like him. Then definitely, yeah. I think, but it's not just a charismatic church. There are tons of like he speaks out a lot about the. Um, no, I'm not doing memberships on this one. I'm not. I'm not to that. I'm not to that level, nor do I think I'm going to get to that level. I don't think I want to go that route. Um, but I think a lot of these churches, like people like Bryson, they preach against the LGBTQ and the big sins is what they talk about, the big sins, and they think if they do that loud enough, then they're good, and they give the excuse that they can do this particular thing, this that, but that they don't actually have a set um, structure outside of that. I'll talk against LGBTQ. That's about all they got going for them anymore. So I don't have a belief either way. I think if you read Revelations, there's no mention of anything called the rapture. We've kind of made up that word. Um, there seems to be a layout of a sequence, and I say whatever happens, however it happens, it will happen. I do know this, that I shouldn't be depending on anything but Christ. I need to keep in touch with Christ. And anything man asks me to do that's outside of Christ, I won't do. I think if I stick to that, I will have a fine time not missing the rapture if it happens, or escaping the pre tribulation if that happens. If you had a daughter and she wanted to marry the same sex, and me being born again, is it wrong for me as a mother not to go to the wedding? Um, this recently came up, and I think it's Pastor Begg. I forget his Alexander Begg, I think is his name. He gave advice that people should go to a trans wedding and a gay wedding and take a gift and all that stuff. Hey, look, listen to me carefully. The same way we dogged Bryson for going into the den of the lion for the approval of the lion, I can't say you should be looking for the approval of anyone who is blatantly going against the word of God. Okay, so that's first. Putting all parenthood aside, if you don't hate mother, father, brother, sister, you cannot follow the kingdom, right? So, with that in mind, why would you give in to them with their request to have you at a gay wedding when they won't even give into you for your belief structure and not invite you? If they know your stance, they are blatantly asking you to go against what you believe for their sake. If they were such a great and tolerable person, they would have said, you know what, my mom is not into this. I will not invite her, but I also understand this is what she believes, and she doesn't have to go. It's odd that they always ask you to leave your belief structure for them, but not the other way around. The problem is you have a charge to hold to somebody bigger than you. They don't. You have to answer to somebody bigger than them. If you say you follow him, you have to answer to him first and not to your daughter, anyone. I have a daughter, and she will not, and I mean none of my kids will ever get me to say, "Oh, I disagree with the Bible and I'm going to do what you say." No, no. You have to put a line in the sand somewhere, and if you don't put that line down, you're just going to end up going everywhere you want, and then problems kick in. So I would not go. If I were in that position, I wouldn't go. I would not. See, here's the thing, and this is why I say I don't think we have to start not giving into their um, definitions. Same-sex people cannot get married. They can have a union, civil union, a law connection. They cannot be married. I don't care what you call it. That's not marriage. And I think the more we say, "Oh, those two are married," they're not married. They're unioned by the government, but they're not married. Marriage is something ordained by God, and man can't decide what marriage is. God does that. God does that. Did it anger you when Pastor Todd poured syrup over the pulpit? Pastor Todd is a whole meme and an anger session every time he opens his mouth. He's not a pastor. He's a entertainer. He's an entertainer. He doesn't want to know God. He doesn't want to follow God. He wants to make his own way and do his own thing. I I I don't think any of the things he does is for the glory of God. It's for his upliftment and for him only. So it doesn't surprise me. The same way it didn't surprise me when he spat in that dude's face. They all think that they can do what Jesus did. Hey, he can keep on calling all the names he wants. They're waiting for him to drop a song about us too. My pastor died at the last church I went to. The bishop came in and ordained a woman to be pastor. He also let his wife preach at the church when he is gone. I did leave. What's the question? I see a statement. I want to know if there's a question. What do you think about the demon slayer we have nowadays? If you slayed a demon, would it come back? And where do you see the word demon slayer in the book? And is that something we're supposed to do, is slay them or cast them out? I don't recall anybody slaying a demon anywhere in the book. Well, maybe if you want to consider, Jesus sending them into the pigs and the pigs dying, slaying a demon, I guess you could call it that. But I have not seen anybody slay a demon in the book. You can cast them out. I just want to know. I just want to know how you slay him. If you can slay a demon, I want to see. I want to see the first person slay a demon. That'd be a that'd be an accomplishment. I want to see that. Good thing to be tired of, man. If you don't stand on something, you stand on nothing. I want to know how many demon slayers we got these days anyway. What is your go-to version? I have gravitated to one called the scriptures. Um my 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 best buddy introduced me to that version, and it stays, when it comes to names, it keeps all the names in a original language setting, so it doesn't try to translate it to English. So you read the book, and any of the names that you see, they stay in the language, the Greek or the Hebrew that it was written in. So it's just kind of nice. It doesn't try to. It gives every time it gives a definition of the word, like the difference between gods and God. They do that. Um, so it's nice. So it's called the scriptures. That's what I use. Let me see here. Is there a YouTube channel that with a super kind donation will show you how to slay it? Yeah. Yes. Tons of those. They have all kinds of classes on how to do it. They've never shown you, but I think even Marcus said he had pulled a snake out of a lady in one of his services. He pulled out a snake out of her back, an actual snake out out of her back. Yeah. Not quite sure how he pulled that off, but Diane asked a question. Let's see if I can find Diane's question. Sticks and stones. Okay. How long do you think a person should grieve over a loved one? Folks are saying move on, whatever. All right. No one can define that for you. My father has been dead. This year will be 40 years. 40 years my father has been gone now. And I still miss him. I don't miss him in a point where it's like I hate God, but I do miss my father. He is a good man. I remember all the fun we had. I miss him. I see my kids and I wish that they had been around to he had been here for them to hang out with, because I think he would have been quite an amazing grandpa. I watch my sons, and 3 of them are not even mine, but they share traits that my father had. My youngest one especially. So for 40 years, for about 28 of those, I was angry with God, and for the balance of it, I was happy that I had the time with my dad, but I still miss him. So for people who say that the grieving, it does not stop. It changes the type of grieving, but it does not stop. I don't think you should tell people that you need to stop grieving for someone that died. Everyone has a different way of handling it. Some people compartmentalize and shut it off. They just leave it alone. They don't deal with it. They stop. They remember the person fondly, but they have a way to shut off the emotional floodgates so that they don't get overwhelmed. I don't get overwhelmed with it, but once in a while, I will stop and just lay there and think about my pops, and I will cry. It's not a big deal for me to say, like, I will miss my pops, and I'm okay with that. I will see people hanging out with their grandpa, and I wish that my kids could have that too. He would have been 97, but still, it's not something that you can just shut off. Some people can, but I wouldn't say. Here's one thing I tell people not to allow happen, though, is to make that the missing of them become your focal point of living or dying, and letting that turn into anger. I had that happen, and that's what you don't want. You don't want grief to turn into anger. I've found that if I'm sad that my pops is gone, the one thing I'm starting to gravitate to now is remembering the fun we had, and it doesn't stay with anger. It just becomes a fond memory, and I move on. So that's what I would suggest you do. Again, everyone deals in it their own way. There is a time to grieve and a time to laugh. So it tells you in the book there's a time for it. It didn't say there's only one time for it. There's a time. I highly doubt, this is just me, I highly doubt that one can have a parent lost, the person that lost a parent has a child, and you look at your child and not miss your parent. I'm sorry, that happens. Especially if you had a good parent, that would happen. I am not. It shouldn't be closed. Let me check. Let me check and see. I don't think it should not be closed. That shouldn't be. Um, Hang on one second. It says it's live. That don't make no sense. Um, why is it closed? The registration close date. That doesn't make any sense. I did not make that to have a end time that quickly. Let me let me check on this and see why. Um, that doesn't make any sense. Um, I'll see what they say. But it shouldn't be closed. That should not be. I will rectify that right now while I'm talking to you guys. Let me see here. It doesn't say anything about weed. Doesn't say anything about weed. I don't recall weed being in the Bible. I, I couldn't tell you what the Bible says about weed. Doesn't it mentions incense? That's smoke, I guess. It doesn't mention smoking either. Um, I have to get this rectified because I will forget. Let me see here. So let's do this. I'll get that question answered this way. Let's see what people say. So this is where people normally go to for the weed situation, right? They go to all the verses that have to do with wine, drunkenness, disorderly behavior, sober mindedness, keeping the temple clean. They go to all those scriptures, right? Um, but here's a problem. They go to those scriptures and they don't apply it to the simple things like fat. or soda or sugar. They don't apply to those things, and I don't get if you're going to apply it to something as egregious. Okay, say let's say cigarettes and weed are something that you said the Bible shouldn't have because it's bad for your health, and you shouldn't drink either because that's bad for your health. And then you see them talking, but they're like 400 pounds and they eat fried food all the time and they drink soda all the time. And you get what I mean? Like, if you're going to tell me under the guise that it's supposed to be the temple and you take care of it, I know of people that do marijuana, whether that be in the oils, the rubs, the smoke, whatever, they do it for the betterment of their body. I have seen people who suffer from Alzheimer's and who suffer from Parkinson's do weed, the sick, they actually smoke, and it reduces their symptoms, sometimes eradicates it. So if you're going to put it under the idea that it's for the temple and it's supposed to keep the temple, am I keeping the temple? Am I trying to make it not hurt? Am I using something that's psychedelic? If I suppose I eat a mushroom, an undoctored mushroom by mankind, and I receive some, you know, drunkenness is sinful, Freddie. Drunkenness is sinful. Drunkenness is. I saw someone said good question, but I did not see the question. Do you believe cremation is wrong? If cremation is wrong, then no one should die by fire. The body's going to get consumed anyway. The body's going to get consumed anyway. It's going to get deteriorated in the dirt, or it's going to get burned up in a car wreck or something. To say that cremation itself is wrong, unless you burn the person alive, I don't see how that can possibly be wrong. What is my opinion on where the Bible says wine is a mockery? Let's go to that and see what it says, okay? And I'll come back to that next question here. What are your thoughts on sleep paralysis or the presence of your bed? Well, I believe there are presence in your bedrooms. Trust me, I've seen them, so I know it exists. Where is no, Arlene? I did not. Let me go back and see if I can find it. It's in Wenatchee, Washington. Wenatchee, Washington. It'll spell it for you if you look it up. I'm looking for the rest of the questions, but I don't see it. Brenda dropped a verse, but I'm looking for it again. There it is. Proverbs 1:26. Okay. Let's go there and see what it says. Okay. Proverbs 1. Let's go from 23. Turn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit on you. I'll make your words known to you, my words known to you, because I have called you and you refused. I have stretched out my hand and no one regarded, because you disdain all my counsel, and would have none of my rebuke. I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock you when your terror comes, when terror comes on you like a storm, and the destruction comes on you like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. Proverbs 1:26 does not say wine is a mockery. So maybe check the verse that you're thinking of again. Just so you know, it does not say wine is a mockery. He says he will mock them on the day of their calamity. And as for cigarettes and stuff, everybody knows the consequences of cigarettes. That's for you to decide whether you want to die young or die old. Pick. If it's a direct destruction of something that God gave you, I mean, why would you? But hey, is what it is. But as for weed, I can't say it's a sin. I think everybody has a different reaction to it. You want to smoke weed, you smoke weed. I don't find any benefits to it. Um, I'm here to serve one person, and anything I have questions about, he makes clear whether I should or shouldn't, and it's a conscious thing. The same thing we talked to you about days and feasts and stuff like that, and each one makes in his mind his own decisions up between him and God. Proverbs 20. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise, which is true. Okay. In essence, wine does result in mocking if used inappropriately. Factual statement. Strong drink is a brawler. And if you watch what happens when most people have strong drink, they get violent. And whoever is led astray by it is not wise. It doesn't say whoever uses it, it says whoever is led astray. That's what it says. I think a lot of people get caught up in this idea that you can't do anything at all as a Christian. And they get so bogged down in not being free and not having control over themselves that they but here's the thing, if you know you can't have one drink, don't have one drink. If you are afraid of one drink taking you down a horrible road, don't drink. I myself, this is me. Wine, not a problem for me. Beer, not a problem for me. They don't lead to sin. I don't get stumbling drunk. I don't give into drunkenness, but I will have beer. And I will have wine. Some people may consider that sinful. Well, if that's what you consider sin, then don't do it. There are some things that are blatantly sinful, obviously. That isn't one of them. So I think too many people put these emphasis on things that should not be there, but they want to because they can. Um, yeah, if and look, so like okay, so if you know this happens after one, I wouldn't even have one. And everybody has to make this is why he says to work out your own salvation, because the level to which your conscience burns and mine are two different things. However, there is marked sin that you should step away from, whether it should harm your conscience or not, because obviously some people participate in a sin, so it obviously doesn't burn their conscience. But when they become a Christian, whether it burns your conscience or not, you ought to stop. You get what I mean? That's what I say. Now, how many questions did I miss? Let me see. Looking for questions. And I said I have not had any benefits from any of the smoke ways of doing things. I've had it um, from the CBD side. So I'm not saying, I think drunkenness, and people have to understand the difference between drinking and drunkenness. There's a massive difference between drinking and drunkenness. And yeah, exactly. If Jesus turned water into wine and it was the best wine there, was the wine he gave them in an attempt to make them drunk? No, it wasn't an attempt to make them drunk. So Here's the thing, right? And I know I'm gonna, like I said, once this stays up, you're gonna see people come in the comment section saying I don't know what I'm talking about, and I have not yet said anything um, unbiblical. So I don't see how they're gonna gauge that, but I know they will. Okay, this might be a silly question, but I always wonder if judgment day comes when Christ comes again, or if the some judgment is at the time of death. I should know enough to know the answer to that question. Um, there's a judgment coming for everyone, and this is what other people believe, that there is going to be a separate one for the ones who are following. They go first, tribulation, second judgment for all the people left on earth. And that was the big today with the book of life and all. Here's my take on it. Okay, and this is, people have heard me say this before. Whether I go or whether I stay, whether I'm raptured or left in the tribulation, I don't decide it. It is not me that decides where and when I leave. God does. My only charge is to do what he says while I have the option to do it, follow while I can, stay as close to him as I possibly can here on earth. The rest of it, he deals with. I do what I need to in my world to make my calling and election sure. And I do that by doing what he says to do. If I do that, the rest of it is for him to decide and how he handles it, which is why I don't bog myself down with which one's going to happen first. What kind of rapture? Are we just going to disappear? I don't care, because God's the one that does it. He whether or not it's an actual woman on a dragon, don't care. I don't care, because I ultimately do not have control over that. And I'm glad I don't have control over that. However it pans out, I'll be ready for, if I am connected to the tree. Stay connected. Stay connected. And you won't have to worry about that. I'm a waitress and I was given a casino chip the other day. Would it be sinning if I put it on red? Consider what gambling leads to and then make your decision. Here's the thing. The mere fact that your conscience is asking you about it should give you your answer. You see what I mean? The mere fact that your conscience is stepping in and saying, maybe you shouldn't, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, you give that someone gave it to you, but the mere fact that you're asking, should I, should be an inclination that your spirit is not settled with it, and so don't do it. Just don't do it. Um, that's like when people go to a birthday party and they offer somebody an adult beverage, and you say, no, and the person next to you say, why don't you have a drink? And you're like, well, I just don't feel I should. And then because they say, well, it's not that big a deal, then you have it. You've just violated your own conscience. What do you think is going to happen if you get presented with something that God wants you to do? You already violate your own conscience. It's not going to be that far for you to violate God's. You know, it's not going far fetched. So choose. It's a choice you have to make, but you have to choose, you know, God's way. You're going to violate what you want and know to be right what's that going to leave you when God asks you to do something? I know. Oh, it is. Happy birthday, Connie. Happy birthday. All of 25. Exactly. Everybody, look, let's not play the game that we don't know what tempts us, okay? Let's be honest about something. Please, if you're watching and if you take nothing else from this, let's be honest with ourselves. Everybody knows what they're tempted by. You all of y'all know what your weak spot is. If you know you have a weak spot and a vulnerability, there should be zero question in your mind about making yourself available to that weakness. Now, understand, failure happens all the time because you're fighting the urge. But consistent failure of something is meaning that you don't really want it rectified. That's really what it is. You don't want it rectified. And knowing what you can and cannot handle, knowing what you can and cannot consider right. Okay, it's like marriage. Okay, um, there are men and women that get married that have a different viewpoint about intimacy. The Bible clearly states how intimacy should take place, not what takes place during intimacy, but how intimacy takes place. It is a mutual decision between the two, not one saying no and one saying yes. In order to have an agreement about something, you need to discuss it. You have to be aware that your life is for your partner and your partner's life is for you. So a trade-off based on emotionality is should be an easy thing. Just because you don't want to does not mean you don't, because your partner is also a very valuable person that you have to think about. Today's society wants to tell you whatever the woman wants, that's okay. Husbands doesn't need to be heard. But then you don't consider your husband, and your husband is now struggling because you've left him to be tempted. This is your fault now. I want you to understand this. I am blaming women and I'm blaming men when you do this to your spouse. You purposefully leave them in a position to be tempted. That's what you're really doing. The reason is you come together so that you avoid people being tempted, so that you may not be led into temptation. Every time, every time you do refuse your spouse on a mutual ground. Now, hear me out. Mutual ground is one thing you do separate for prayer and fasting, and then you come back together, is what it says, so that you guys don't be tempted. And if that only means one of you will get tempted, you need to rectify that for that person. It's that simple. It's that easy. I don't think people want are not ready for that though. We can I don't think I can have a discussion like that on this channel just yet. Um Maybe one day I will. I would not say it's a totally different story coming from somebody who has been that person. I think it might be something that you don't understand as to why, but that does not mean that it's a totally different story. Um, what I have found is that men are expected to have way more control than they can, and they're put in positions to be and have expectations of it that, you know, so there's some things that I don't know. I think okay, the majority of people think that men are they have too much of a drive. It's the majority of it is that women have less drive than men, and there is an occasional state where women have more of a drive than men do. But the biggest thing is that men want it more than women. That's the going stereotype. And so when a man gets rejected, he should be able to deal with it, because you can't expect somebody to be as active as you are. But I don't ever, well, I can't say don't ever. I hardly see the woman saying that because he has that high of a drive, I need to do more to fulfill it. It's always he needs to cut down so that I can fulfill what I can fulfill. The same thing goes vice versa. If the man has a low drive and the woman has a high drive, you get what I mean? I can't keep up. And this is where problems start to set in, because people don't talk anymore. They don't come together so that no one is tempted. The whole purpose of prayer and fasting, apart from each other, is to work on what you don't want to do so that you do it for your partner. So when you come back together, which is why it has to be, and it's important for it to be in a marriage. If it's in a marriage, you have time to work it out together. You have time to get to know each other. You're committed to getting to get it figured out, and it works. We work in in environment now too that everybody wants a fix to happen right now. A fix right now, have the fix. It's a time taking thing. You get to learn the person, their likes, their dislikes. You have to learn that person, and it doesn't happen overnight. Didn't happen overnight. The wives and stuff thing was not a God ordained thing. And I say it like this: it was allowed, not approved. It was allowed, not approved. Okay, that's all I know. It was allowed, not approved. The conference is in July. July. July 24th. And I don't know why it says it's closed. So I don't know how to fix that. It shouldn't have been shut off. I thought I put it for 1 month before. I thought I put it for 1 month before. So I don't know. But I'll get it rectified. I promise I'll get it figured out. Had who on? Had who on? What? Ringo? Who is Ringo? Is that like the drummer from the Beatles? Is that the Ringo you're talking about? Yeah, so the conference is about family. There'll be breakout sessions for the men, women, and children. And we will have a um, the first day will be um, the group. Everyone's together, get oriented with everybody, meet and greet, and then Thursday will be men in one group, and they'll cycle. There'll be two different speakers, Corey and Felton Baker, um, and we'll have them. So we'll have two groups of men. Each will swap out back and forth, and then two groups of women. Each one will swap out back and forth, and then on Friday we will have um, the last day of the environment, where we're going to have everybody come back together and talk amongst each other about what they've learned and how they can implement it that year um, in your family. Is Ringo? Is it Ringo TV Reactions? Is that the channel you guys are talking about? Ringo TV Reactions. The first day will be the only day streamed. I can't stream from those classes, but I'm going to stream that first day only. Um, and go from there. So we'll only stream that first day. Uh, I, from how this looks, yeah, him and I couldn't have a conversation. Yeah, no, him and I couldn't have no conversation. No, 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 nope, nope. Sorry. It's not even a matter of run. I can't tolerate and I can't deal with people like no, no. Just the way he talk alone make me not want to talk to him. I'm good. I'm so good. Thank you. No. Mm-mm. No. I have no doubt he might be BHI, and if he's even remotely BHI, I definitely don't want to have no conversation with. No, I'm fine. I'm trying to keep my peace, people. I'm trying to keep my peace. That's not going to give me my peace. That's going to give me complete. No, I'm good. No, I'm good. I'm so good. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Nope, not happening. Yeah, Black Hebrew Israelite, Lydia. Black Hebrew Israelite. Anyway, Monday. Okay, so next week will be a very sketchy week. I will not have a show on Thursday, but I will be having a show every other day, but not Thursday. Okay. If you guys want to help me out, go rewatch some stuff. And yeah, so I'll not be here on Thursday. Um, let me see something. I want you to. I'm trying to find a. Okay, so this is. I'm going to show you guys why I cannot have a discussion with that individual. Okay, just so people are aware.
In life, you cannot wait for no one to motivate you. You gotta motivate yourself because no one is gonna be there when you really need them. And I know that's difficult, but that's just how life is. Sometimes you have to grow up and recognize the truth. The truth is you're alone, but it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. You see, a lot of people haven't gotten comfortable with being alone. And therefore, when life brings different issues, different circumstances, they lock up in a world of misery because they believe that they need company in order to get through. But really, all you need is yourself. All you need is time to think it over.
That is why I cannot have a conversation with him. Going to church can't be wrong. It's going to the wrong church is wrong. If you go to the wrong church, you're in trouble. You can get in some real hot water going to the wrong church. Mm-mm. There's no. It's not wrong to go to church, but it's insane to go to the wrong church. That's what I would say. And the forsaking of yourselves is in a group, two or three or more. Doesn't matter. It doesn't say go to the building. It just says don't forsake the gathering of yourselves. We do need each other. This is a gathering right here. This is a gathering right here. So no, we've come attached to a building and thinking that's all there is. Can you explain John 1:21 through 23? I am sure we can take a stab at it. John 1:22 or 21 through 23. Let's see what that says. And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you a prophet?" He said, "No." And they asked him, "Who are you, that we may give an answer to those who sent us? What do you say about yourself?" He said, "I am the voice of the one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord." And the prophet Isaiah, as the prophet Isaiah said, now those who were sent were from the Pharisees, and they asked him, saying, "Why do you baptize if you are not the Christ, nor Elijah, nor the prophet?" John answered them, saying, "I baptize with water, but there stands one among you who you do not know. It is he who, coming after me, is preferred before me, whose sandal strap I am not worthy to loose." Matthew 11, 13, 14. It seems like they contradict, but we know there are no contradictions in Scripture. So let's see what Jesus said in Matthew 11, 13. Matthew 11, 13 says, this is what, 13 through 14, okay? "For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John, and if you are willing to receive it, he is Elijah who is to come. He who has ears to hear, let them hear." So let's go back to the verses prior to. "Assuredly, I say to you," this is 11, "among those born of women, there has not risen one greater than John the Baptist. But he who is the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. From the days of John the Baptist until the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. For the prophets and the law prophesied until John." So where's the contradiction, do you think? I don't see. They're not talking about the same things. Or are you saying the contradiction is saying that when John says that he is not worthy to tie his shoes and that he is not Elijah, but you're saying probably in 14 that he is Elijah who is to come? Is that the contradiction you're talking about? That the reason that there's not a contradiction here is that he is not Elijah. If you're willing to receive it, he's Elijah who is to come, is not the same person. So no, there is no contradiction. There is no contradiction. Why did John the Baptist seem like he questioned the fact if Jesus was the one when they took him to jail? What do you mean? I don't get what you mean. Maybe you can clarify that a little bit more. Last question. If you can clarify that question. What would you consider to be unfaithfulness in marriage? I think it would be anything that takes your attention away from the spouse and not fulfill your role. That'd be it. That'd be it. Does that seem like a fair enough response? Hello? Is that a fair enough response there? Do you believe Melchizedek is a shadow of Jesus Christ? Hebrew in the Bible makes that question in my heart and mind. He is a priest after the order of Melchizedek. And then again, like I said, you have Christ, and his lineage is only there to show how he got there. I think when we start to make everything about the details of it, you forget what he's actually doing in his role. I think you forget that real quick, and that's a problem. So, yeah. All right. So, okay, next Thursday, no show. Monday, I have not picked a topic yet, but we do have our weekend thing this weekend for Rumble on Savage Patriots. We're on today at 6:30. The live for tonight that was for Too Strong is moved to Monday. So we'll be back on Monday night for that live, and we'll see you guys on Monday. And for those of you that joined Savage Patriots, we'll see you at 6:30 today. Thank you for the questions. Hopefully I answered some of them. I did do an entire thing about Paul. You can go back and look at the list I have. I made an entire thing about it. So you can go take a look at it. Wisdom calls to you from the streets. So please, please, please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams, for if dreams die,